Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Maths Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. We're talking about factorizing or solving cubic equation or function using the KX method, all right? Please, this is the third method, okay? I've talked about two previous methods. The last one was the factor theorem and the long division, using factor theorem and long division. All right, so make sure you review previous videos. And like I said, I'm just giving you all these methods so you have so many tools in your arsenal. And the most important one that you need to know depends on the type of question you have. Is that right? So we're going to go straight into this. And like I always say, if you've not liked, shared, or subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for. And when you subscribe, please click the notification bell. So when I post new videos, you'll be the first person to know. All right. So in order for us to talk about the KX method, there are some things you need to review. You need to review the factorization methods as well as the factor theorem, okay? So I'm going to just write it down here so that in case you've forgotten how to use the factorization method or the factor theorem, just go to the playlist, okay? In the playlist, just search factor theorem and you will see the videos, and then feel free to go around and solve the question. So make sure you've reviewed the factorization methods. Okay, so make sure you review the factorization methods and also try and make sure you understand or you remind yourself about the factor theorem. All right, good. Now let's get straight into this. So when do you use this kind of the KX method? Okay, when you use the KX method, you use the KX method when you have D not to be equal to 0 and when you have A to be equal to 1. But before I go down there, I just want to remind you that when you are having a cubic function has a standard form of ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equal to 0. So this is what we call the standard form. And when you have the standard form, this is how the cubic function should look like. So remember, I told you in the cubic function, you can never have a to be equal to 0, but b, c, and d can be equal to 0. Is that right? Okay. So now this KX method, the method 3, okay, only works for when d is not equal to 0 and a is equal to 1. So I'm going to write it down here. So this method only works when d is not equal to 0 and a is equal to what? 1. All right, so you can only use this method when the a value you have here is 1, and when d is any number except 0. Now, this is a very long method, okay? Very long method. I think I have about 16 steps for this, all right? So you just have to be patient and go step by step, all right? As usual, I'm going to write all the steps down, and there are about 16 steps. But after, I'm going to pick an example and solve. I'll now give you an exercise to try. Then I'm going to solve it as well. Okay, so let's get cracking. So we have the 16 steps or the 16 rules on how to solve using the KX method. Number 1, when you're doing this, you have to ensure, all right, the cubic function. You have to ensure the cubic function has a constant. Okay, so the cubic function has a constant and d is not equal to what? 0. Okay, so the cubic function has a constant, so that means the value here, you must have a value here, and also, and the coefficient of x squared of x cubed, I beg your pardon, coefficient of x cubed is equal to 1. So that means what I'm trying to say, that a must be equal to 1. So that means if you put it in the standard form, the value of a here should be 1, And the value of d here can never be what? 0, okay? So this only happens after writing the cubic function, okay? This only happens after writing the equation in standard form. Then number 2, the next thing is that you then have to then identify your A, your B, your C, and what? D, okay? So after writing it in the standard form, you need to know what your A is, your B, your C, and what? D, okay? Now, similar to what we did in the factor theorem and long division method, so here, you then have to find all the factors, of D, okay? So you have to find all the factors of D. Then when you found all the factors of D, you then have to then plug in each of the factors. So you have to plug in each of the factors. Okay, into the original what? Equation. Okay, and see, so when you've plugged it in, you plugged it and you see which will give you 0. So you plug in each of the factors into the original equation, and then you see which will give you 0. Then number 5, after plugging in, you then have to then rewrite, okay, the factor form, just like what we did in the factor theorem and long division method. So you then have to rewrite the factor form. Step 4, by taking the value to the side of x, okay? And when you've done that, number 6, you then open the second bracket. So remember I told you we have 16 steps to do this. All right, so you open the second what? Bracket. Then number 7, after opening the second bracket, now the first term you're gonna have in the second bracket will be the value that when you multiply the x in the first bracket will give you a. Okay, so the first term in the second bracket will be the value that when you multiply the x value in the first bracket it will give you a. Okay, so the first time in the second bracket will be the value that when you multiply the x value in the first bracket, it will give you a. Number 8. So the second term now, the second term in the second bracket will be plus kx, okay? So that means the second term you're going to write is plus what? Kx. All right? Then number 9, after doing that, the third term in the second bracket so the third term in the second bracket will be a value that when you, so it's to be a value that when you multiply the constant in the first bracket, it will give you D. Okay, so the third term in the second bracket will be a value that when you multiply the constant in the first bracket, it will give you D. Okay, like I said, we're going to solve a question on this, so don't worry. So number 10, the next thing you have to do, then you have to combine the first and the second bracket. So number 10, you combine the first and second what? Bracket. Okay. Then after combining both of them, number 11, what you then do is that you then expand the first bracket. Okay, so you just expand the first and the second bracket normally as you used to do, the A plus B, C plus D, or what we talked about in the basic algebra. Then you then combine similar S coefficients and constant together. So you expand the first and second brackets. Normally, and combine similar X coefficients okay, and constants together. Okay, so after you've done that, then you go to step 12. We're almost there. Remember I said it's 16. So what you then do, you then equate all the variables with the same coefficient with the corresponding original equation. So that means all the S cube coefficients, you combine it together, the S squared coefficient, you combine it together, the X coefficient as well as the constant, okay? So what you do is that you equate all variables with the same coefficients together. Okay? So you combine all variables with the same coefficient with the corresponding original equation. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that, for instance, the S cube coefficients, you combine them together. What you will notice is that the S cube coefficient will be the same. Okay? Then you combine the S squared coefficient. Okay? You also combine the X coefficient. Then after that, they also combine the constants. Okay? Now, what you also understand is that the constant as well will be the same. Then when you're done with this part, number 13, step 13, you then have to then solve appropriately, either using linear or simultaneous equation to find K. All right? So you then solve appropriately. Okay, you solve appropriately, either using linear, or you can use simultaneous equation. Okay, or let me just say simultaneous method. Maybe that will, so you can use simultaneous methods. I have a video series on the types of simultaneous methods. Okay, um, you can go back and look at it. So to find what? K. So you can either use linear methods or simultaneous equation methods to find K. Then number 14, after finding K, you now replace the value of K into step 10. So remember step 10 here, where we combine the first and second bracket with one of the bracket having K. So you then replace the value of K into that one of the brackets, okay? So you replace the value of K into step 10. And number 15, after you've replaced the value of K, you then have to then factorize the second bracket, having the quadratic equation, using any of the previously discussed factorization methods, okay? So you then factorize the second bracket, having the quadratic equation, okay? So using any of the previously discussed factorization method. Okay, so I have also have a video series on factorization, okay, um, on how to factorize common factors, difference of two square when a is equal to 1, when a is not equal to 1. I've been using how to use the formula to factorize as well. So I've discussed all this method already. So please try as much as possible to have a look at it and make sure you practice, all right? So because we're going to just apply the method here. So factorization, okay? Use factorization method here. Then number step 16, which is the final one, we then combine, okay? So when we're done with this, the next thing that you do is that you then combine answer, okay? You combine the answer you got from step 15, okay? And the first bracket together. Okay, so you then combine the answer from step 15 and the first bracket together. And that is it. Those are the 16 steps. I know you were like, wow, Terry, this is a lot. Don't worry. When we start solving, you see how easy it is, okay? So let's go. What I'm going to do to be consistent, I'm going to use the exact same example we discussed in the previous video. I'm going to apply here, and I'm going to see if we're going to get the same thing, or I can just get new form new questions. I will solve it. So any of that could work for me. All right, let's start with this one. All right. Now, let's say we have this question here. We have x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. And you were told to factorize. So remember, I told you in the beginning, in order for you to solve this, The D must not be equal to 0 and A must be equal to 1. So the D is not equal to 0, good, and A is equal to 1. So let's go. Let's start with the steps. So step 1 said that we have to ensure that A is equal to 1 and D not equal to 0 after writing in standard form, okay? So step 1, we can see it fulfilled that what? The criteria. So we're having x squared minus 3x squared plus 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. All right, so let's go to step 2 now. All right, step 2. Step 2 now said we need to identify A, B, C, D. All right, so let's identify that. So our A is equal to 1. Our B is equal to minus 3. Our C is equal to what? 3. And our D is equal to minus 1. Step 3, as you can see, our A here is 1 and our D is not equal to 0. So it still validates what we got in step 1. So let's go to step 3 now. Find all the factors of what? D, okay? So basically, we're not going to look for all the factors of minus 1. So 1 times minus 1 will give you minus 1. There's nothing else you can do. So that is basically there are only 2 factors. So we're going to have just only 1 and minus 1. So these are the only 2 factors we have here. Are you seeing it? Now, step 4. Plug in each of the factors, that is the factors we've got, so that is the 1 and minus 1, into the original equation and see which one will give you 0. All right? So let us start with 1. So step 4. So if x is equal to 1, you put 1 into this place. We have 1 cubed minus 3, 1 squared, plus 3, 1 minus 1. And when you press your calculator, this will give you what? 0. So therefore, x is equal to 1 is a factor for this. Let's go to step 5. Rewrite the factor from step 4 by taking the value to the side of x. So step 5, we have to rewrite. So step 5, to rewrite, we'll have to take 1 to this side. So it will become, the plus 1 will become minus 1, right? So you take 1 to this side, so it's going to be x minus 1. So we've gotten the first factor, so x minus 1. Good. Now, let's go to step 6. So for step 6, we're told to open a second bracket. Wow, that's interesting. Let's go. Let's open a second bracket. So step 6, we already have, what do you call it? We already have x minus 1 here. So we're going to open the second bracket. So we have x minus 1, and we're going to open the second bracket. Step 7. Okay. So they said the first term, okay, let's listen carefully here. They said the first term in the second bracket will be the value that when you multiply the x value in the first bracket, it will give you a. So that means the first value will be a value that you multiply x that is going to give you a. So let's look at this. Now, if you go back to that example, our a here is 1, okay? So that means we're looking for a number that you put in the first term that's going to give us the first value. And the first value we have here is what? X cubed. Are you seeing it? So the value we're looking at, or the original equation we have, is x cubed. That's the first value. So what I'm going to put in this second bracket, that will give us x cubed. And that will be what? X squared, because x multiplied by x squared will give you x cubed. So that means what we can now write is going to become x minus 1, and we have x squared. Because when you multiply x squared times x, is going to give us the first term, x squared, and you also see that the a you will get is exactly the same. Step 8. The second term in the second bracket will be plus kx. So that's pretty straightforward. So we've gotten this. So step 8, the second term, you're going to write is going to be kx plus kx. So we have plus kx must be the second term. So what we then have to do is going to become x minus 1. We have x squared plus kx. Are you seeing it? Good. Now, step 9. Now, for step 9, what you have to do, they said the third term in the second bracket will be a value that when you multiply the constant in the first bracket, it will give you d. So we know that we have minus 1. And the equation we have for d is also minus 1. So what are you going to multiply with minus 1 that also give you the d? Because we know now that our d we have is minus 1. So what will you multiply with minus 1 to give you minus 1? So that will be 1, because minus 1 times 1 will give you 1. So therefore, we can now say it's going to become x minus 1, x squared plus kx plus 1. Because plus 1 times minus 1 will give you the d that we're looking for. All right. So we're done with that. We've done with step 9. Let's go to step 10. Step 10. Combine the first and the what? The second bracket. So step 10, we need to combine the first and the second bracket together. So we've already had this already. So we have x minus 1, and we have x squared plus kx plus 1. So we've combined both together. All right, so step 11. So what does step 11 say? Step 11, we then have to now expand the first and second bracket normally and combine similar terms or similar s coefficients and constants together. So we then have to expand this normally. So under basic algebra, I explained to you that when you're expanding, you take the first term to expand, multiply each of them, and you take the second term to multiply each of them. All right? So let's do this. So we have x minus 1, x squared plus kx plus 1. All right? So for this now, what will now happen? So you're going to start. So we have, you use this to multiply this. So x times x squared will give you what? X cubed. X times kx will give you what? Kx squared. X times plus 1 will give you plus x. You now do the same thing with the minus. Minus 1 times x squared will give you minus x squared. Minus 1 times kx will give you minus kx. And minus 1 times 1 will give you what? Minus 1. Then, remember, it's 11. We're told that we have to what? Combine the similar s coefficient and constant together. So let's combine them. So all the x cubed will come together. We only have 1. The x squared, we have 2. So it's going to be plus kx squared minus x squared. You have to combine everything together. Then the x, we only have 2. It will be plus x, plus x minus kx. Then we have minus 1. All right? So from this now, we can now say this is the value when we expand what? The bracket for step 11. So this is the final answer we got when we expand what? The bracket. Now the next one, step 12. So for step 12, equate all the variables with the same coefficient with the corresponding original question. Okay, So you have x cubed, x squared, and x. So what do you have to do? So I'm going to write step 12 in a new page so that I'll have enough space to explain. Okay? So from step 11, we got x cubed, all right, plus kx squared. We got x cubed plus kx squared minus x squared plus x. So we had minus x squared, okay, plus x, okay, and minus kx minus 1. So minus kx minus 1, okay? And we're comparing it with the original question. The original question we had was x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x minus 1. So we're going to write it down. So we're comparing these two now, okay? We're comparing it with x cubed plus, is it plus or minus? Okay, minus 3x squared, okay? So we have it as minus 3x squared plus, I think it's plus 3x minus 1. So it's going to give us plus 3x minus 1. So we're comparing. Now we're comparing that. So let's start with the first one, x cubed coefficient. So that means for this to be equal to this, their coefficient has to be the same. That's what we're trying to say. So you can see what the coefficient of this, 1. What the coefficient of this, 1. So x cubed coefficient is 1. So that was the reason why I told you for the x cubed coefficient, it's always what? The same. Now let's go to the next one. Let's go to x squared. Okay? Coefficient. So that means x squared coefficient. So remember that this is the original question, all right? So this is the original question. So the original question for x squared, we have minus 3. And this must be equal to all the coefficients together. Okay? So we have the original question must be equal to what? The same thing for the expanded version. So the x squared we have is plus k and minus what? 1. So the coefficient of x squared here is minus 3, while the coefficient of x squared here is plus k and minus 1. We do the same thing for x coefficients. Okay? The original question, the x was what? 3. The same thing we're having here, all the x. So these are the x we have here, okay? It's going to give us 1 or plus 1 minus what? K. Are you seeing it? For the x squared, we have this ones here, plus k and minus 1. Are you seeing it? And we're comparing it with this. While this, we're comparing it with this. And for the constant, you can see we have minus 1, minus 1. And that was the reason I told you for the constant as well. The constant is going to give you what? The same. All right. So as you can see, step 12, you can see that we're already having two equations here. So we're having minus 3 is equal to k minus 1. And we're also having 3 is equal to 1 minus k. All right? We're already having two linear equations. So step 13 now. So step 13, okay? So I told you for step 13 that you have to then solve appropriately, either using a linear or simultaneous method to solve this, okay? So we can solve this easily using this, the linear method, all right? The linear method can give us this because we have, the first one we have is minus 3 is equal to k minus 1. And we also have 3 is equal to 1 minus k. So 3 is equal to 1 minus k. So any of this should give you the same answer, okay? So to find k here, so k is going to be equal to, take minus 1 to the other side. It's going to be minus 3 plus 1, and that will give us minus 2. And if you want to use k, you take 1 to the other side. So minus k is going to become 3 minus 1. Minus k is going to be equal to 2. To remove the minus 1, you divide both sides by minus 1. So therefore, k will be equal to minus 2. So you can see, regardless of the linear equation you picked, you got still the same value for what? K. So therefore, we can now say k is equal to what? Minus 2. Now, step 14. Okay, so step 14, we're now told that we then have to replace the value of k in step 10. All right, so where is step 10? This is step 10. So we have, anywhere you see k, replace it with the value of k. So we have x minus 1, x squared plus kx plus 1. So we have x minus 1, and we have x squared plus kx plus 1. So that means anywhere we see k, we put minus 2. We have x minus 1. We have x squared plus minus 2x plus 1. And plus times minus will give us what? Minus, okay? So that will give us x minus 1, x squared minus 2x plus 1. And that is that for that. So that is step 14. All right, let's go to step 15. All right, step 15. The next thing you have to do, step 15, we're told that we have to factorize the second bracket having the quadratic equation using any of the previously discussed factorization methods. So we have the second bracket here, which is x squared minus 2x plus 1. We need to factorize that, 2x plus 1. So two numbers that you multiply, that will give you 1. And when you add it, it's going to give you minus 2, okay? And that will give you minus 1 minus 1. So it's going to be x minus 1, x minus 1, okay? Then finally, step 16. We then combine the answer from step 15 and the first bracket together. So the first bracket we have was x minus 1. Then we combine it with x minus 1, x minus 1. So you combine x minus 1, you got this from here, and this other x minus 1, x minus 1, that is that for that. Okay? Or if you're factor, you can just say x minus 1 cubed. It gives you the same thing. Now, but if you are told to solve, okay, you don't just stop there. You then have to equate x minus 1 to be equal to 0. So therefore, x will be equal to what? 1. 3 times, okay, or thrice, because it's x minus x equals to 1, 1, 1. So that is it. And that will be the answer for that. All right, so I'm going to give you an example now that I want you to try using this method, and I want you to tell me if you get the same thing. So let's try this exercise here. Okay, let's try. Let's assume we have x cubed minus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. And I ask you to factorize, okay? And you're asked to factorize. So you can pause the video based on the notes you have, try and solve this. And when you're done, come back and check if you get the same thing. All right, so let's start. Step 1. All right, so if you go back, step 1, you need to write it in the standard form, right? You have to write it in the standard form, and which has been done already for us. So it's going to be x cubed, or you can say x cubed plus 0x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals to 0. But still the same thing, so you can just leave it as the x cubed minus 4x plus 3 equals to 0, because to still give you 0, okay? Now, step 2, the next thing to do is that we're now told that we then need to identify A, B, C, and D. So we have to identify A, B, C, and D. So let's go. Let's identify it. So A is equal to 1. Now the B is what? 0. The C is equal to minus 4. And the D is equal to what? 3. Step 3. The next thing is to find all the factors of what? D. All right, so all the factors of D, the D we have is 3. So step 3, we're finding the factors of 3, right? Which is the D. So factors of 3, so numbers that you multiply that will give you 3. You can multiply 3 and 1, that will give you 3. Or you can say minus 3 times minus 1, that will give you 3. So all the factors will be 3, 1, minus 3, and minus 1. Okay? So those are the factors of 3. Then we'll go to step 4. Plug in each of the factors into the original equation to find which will give you 0, okay? So what you do, the next step you have to do then, you plug 3 into the original equation, you plug 1, but I know to save time, if the correct one that you have to plug is x to be equal to 1, all right? So you try with 3 first, you see it will not give the answer. You check minus 3, minus 1, but finally the one that will give you the answer, okay, it will be 1. So because I know that already, so I'll put it here. It's going to be 1 cubed plus, or you can say 0x squared, but since I've removed the 0, so I can say 1 cubed minus 4 into 1 plus 3, okay? And you press the calculator, that will give you 0. So therefore, x equals to 1 is a what? Is a factor. Step 5, okay? Then you have to do step 5. Step 5 is that we have to rewrite the factor from step 4 by taking the value to the side of x. So we have to rewrite it. So we have x is equal to 1. We take 1 to the other side, so it'll be x minus 1. So we've gotten the first what? The first factor. All right, so let's go to step 6. So step 6 is that we then have to open a second bracket, okay? So we're gonna have this, so step 6. To have x minus 1, and we're gonna open the second bracket. Then let's go. Now, next one, step 7. Okay, so in step 7, it said the first term in the second bracket will be the value that when you multiply x value in the first bracket, it will give you a. So, and we know that our a in this example, the a was what? A is equal to 1. So basically, the value that you have to put in this first bracket to multiply this to give you x cubed is going to be x squared. All right? So you're going to become x minus 1, x squared. That will be the first term. Then the next one, because we know that x times x squared is going to give us x cubed. And x cubed was the original question, right? Good. Now, the next one is step 8. Okay. Now for step 8, you have the second term with the bracket will be plus kx. So basically you have to just add plus kx to the second bracket. So it's going to be, here we're gonna add kx, so x minus 1, x squared, but now we just add what? Kx. Are you seeing it? Now step 9, step 9, the third term in the second bracket will be a value that when you multiply the constant in the first bracket, it will give you d. So what is our d here? Our d, we have our d to be 3, okay? So d is equal to 3. So what are we going to multiply minus 1 with? That is going to give us 3. So it's minus 1 times minus 3 that will give us 3, right? So that means the third term here is going to be what? Minus 3. So it's going to become x minus 1, x squared plus kx minus what? 3. So step 10, combine the first and second bracket together. So step 10, we're going to have x minus 1, and we're going to have x squared plus kx minus what? 3. Okay. Next one, step 11. All right. We then have to expand the first and second bracket normally and combine the similar x coefficient. Okay, so we're going to combine now. So we have x minus 1, and we have x squared plus kx minus 3. So we're going to open the bracket. So x times x squared will give us x cubed. X times plus kx will give us plus kx squared. X times minus 3 will give us minus 3x. Minus 1 times x squared will give us minus x squared. Minus 1 times this will give us minus kx. Minus 1 times minus 3 will give us plus 3. So as usual, you combine all the x squared together. That will be a step what? Step 12. All right, but we can just combine it here. So it'll be x cubed, the x squared and x squared, so it could become plus kx squared minus x squared minus 3x and this minus 3x minus kx plus what? Plus 3. Okay? So step 12. Okay? So we then have to now go and check for step 12. We then have to equate all the variables with the same coefficient correspond to the original equation, okay? So let's go. Let's look at this again. So we have x cubed plus kx squared minus x squared minus 3x minus kx plus 3, okay? And we are comparing this with the original equation. The original equation was x cubed minus, so you can put this in the standard form with plus 0x squared to make it easier for you. Okay, so it's going to become x cubed plus 0x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, so we're going to combine them together. So the first thing, we have the x cubed coefficients. So you can see the x cubed coefficient here is 1 and 1. So that means it's 1. Like I told you, it has to be the same. Now the x squared coefficient, okay, in the original question, okay, this is the original one. So in the original one, the x squared was 0, but here in the expanded form, x squared, we have k as 1, and we have minus 1 as the second one. Then for the x coefficients, we have minus 4, and here we are having minus 3 and minus what? K. Then also, you also see that the constant here in both of them is 3 and 3. Are you seeing it? So that means we have these two that we're going to work with now. So step 13, okay? So step 13, we need to find for the value of k. Okay, we'll have to use any linear or simultaneous method to find k. So we have 0 is equal to k minus 1. So we have 0 is equal to k minus 1. So you can select any of them, but I'm going to select both of them to make it easier for you to see. And we have minus 4 is equal to minus 3 minus k. So minus 4 is equal to minus 3 minus what? K. You take this to the side, so you're going to have k is equal to 1. Okay? You take this to the side, so it'll be minus 4 plus 3 is equal to minus k. And minus 1 is equal to minus k. Divide both sides by minus 1, and k will be equal to 1. So you see, regardless of which one you pick, you get the same answer. So k is equal to 1. So step 14. All right. So step 14, you then have to then go back, replace the value of k in step 10. So step 10, where was step 10? We have to replace the value of k. So the k we have here, we're going to replace it with 1. So it's going to become x minus 1. And so we have x squared. So it'll be plus x then. It's going to give us x squared plus x minus 3. All right. So step 15. we are meant to factorize. Okay? So step 15, we're meant to factorize the second bracket, having the quadratic equation. But if you now check, we can't factorize this one. So that means x squared plus x minus 3. These don't factorize, all right? They don't factorize. So you have to leave it like that. So that means step 16 will now become x minus 1. And we have x squared plus x minus 3. And if you are told to find the value for x, you can only equate this one. So x minus 1 to be equal to 0. So x will be equal to what? 1. So that will be the answer we're going to get for that. All right, so that is that for that. So the next video, we're going to talk about solving cubic equations without a constant. All right, we're going to talk about how do you solve cubic equation without a constant. And like I always say, if you have any questions, send me an email. I'll get back to you. And also, if you don't understand anything or there's a particular topic you want me to make a video on, send me a message and I'll see you in the next video. All right? Thank you very much. See you soon.